Good morning, lovelies. Let's talk about the wedding feast. Jesus, coffee. It's cold. Excuse the Deadpool hoodie, it's cold. So, wedding feast. So I got up this morning and read through John 2. I'm actually going to post a soap on John 2, but why was the wedding feast why was it perfect timing for Jesus? I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, Jesus served 3 roles in that wedding. Jesus was a guest, he was a son, and he was a host. What do you mean he served 3 roles? Well, I mean, let's talk about it. So, Jesus wasn't a recluse. He accepted invitations to social gatherings. I mean, clearly, he went to a dinner feast with Matthew, the tax collector, which is where the, Pharisees spotted him and said, your teachers, you eat with sinners and tax collectors. So he would accept invitations at social gatherings, including this wedding. Jesus wasn't famous or well known at this point. This is very early in his ministry. It was a small wedding because Jesus came from a poor family. So likely he was invited to this because of Mary, his mother. So also probably a family that was not of high social gathering or, very well off. So it's pretty much a low budget feast. But this couple was very wise, and it's no different than today. One big takeaway to me in John 2 is when you invite Jesus into your wedding or you invite him into your marriage, nothing but good things come. That's really, to me, the big pearl of wisdom or takeaway from this is when we invite Jesus, first of all, into our lives. But when you get married and you enter into that covenant union where it's you, your spouse, and Jesus in your marriage, a strand of 3 cords is not quickly broken. Or a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken, sorry. So that was his guest. That was his role as a guest. He wasn't well known. So at this point in time, it was Mary, Jesus, and his 6 disciples. It's kind of thought that at this point, Joseph had probably died. Jesus' father, stepfather, I guess, had died. So that was his role as a guest. He was a son. So Jewish wedding feasts lasted a week. And they started on Wednesdays. If they were a widow, they started on Thursdays. So it was necessary for the groom to have adequate provisions to last for a week. Well, it would have been embarrassing. One, it would have been embarrassing to run out of wine, to either run out of food or wine. And a family guilty of such a faux pas of running out of wine would have been actually fined. So it would have been not only financially disastrous, but socially disastrous for that family to run out of wine. So Mary comes to Jesus. Why did she approach Jesus about the problem? Did she expect him to do something special to meet the need? So we come to the beginning of John 2. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And I love Jesus' response to her in verse 4. He says, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. Now, when he says my hour, first of all, him saying woman sounds abrupt or harsh, but it's actually not. It's actually a respectful, it's a respectful and a polite response to her, and a polite way to address her. And he's reminding her of a couple things. First of all, that yes, you're my mother, but I'm not under your authority anymore, because he's a man at this point in time. He's about 30 years old at this point in time. He was under his father's will. So, you look at that, and some feel that the way you talked to Mary there was harsh, but it actually wasn't, guys. It wasn't. What did she expect him to do? And when he says, my hour has not yet come, he's talking about the heavenly timetable. Do we know, physically, hey, wait a minute, Dad said he wasn't going to give me my powers until, no. He just meant that the Father had not willed him and not called him to do something about it. So that was really his role as a son in that moment. Now, the role in a host, let's talk about that, because he didn't host this wedding. The family hosted the wedding. But how in turn did Jesus really become the host? His first miracle was not a spectacular one. It was not one that everybody witnessed. Mary and the disciples and the servants knew what had happened, but nobody else at the feast knew. They didn't have a clue or an idea that a miracle had taken place. So there were 6 stone water pots, which each held 20 gallons of water. So they were filled up. And when you go through the passage, those were filled up. And Jesus spent some time over them and told the servants to draw out water and bring it to the organizer of the wedding and of the feast. So they drew out water, but when they put it into the cup, into the goblet, it actually was wine. Not only was it wine, but it was such superior wine that the family was actually praised, publicly praised. And I'm sure they basked in that praise. Because he'd said that, he says in the master of the ceremonies of the feast, says in verse 10, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior, because at this point in time, they're drunk. So you kept the good wine until now. So publicly praising this family, this beginning the signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So this was done for multiple reasons. First of all, it was done, Jesus, his first miracle. His disciples got to see. So now, do we need to see miracles to believe in Jesus? No, we don't need to see a bunch of miracles happen. First of all, when we hear testimonies of other people who've gone through and their lives have been changed, good morning, Missy, their lives have been changed by Jesus, then they are witnessing a miracle, because their life has been changed and transformed by the power of Christ. It certainly wasn't me that transformed me. It was all him. So we get to see those miracles. They're not, the parting of the Red Sea, water being turned into wine, but they're no less miracles, because a person's life is completely transformed by the power of Christ. They're no longer liars, manipulators, womanizers, but liar, manipulator, womanizer, turn evangelist. Certainly wasn't my choosing, it was his. So it revealed his glory, it built the faith and belief in the disciples, and over the course of time, their faith had grown after watching and listening to Jesus. So Jesus at the feast, really such a pivotal point in Jesus' ministry. And again, not anything that was, you look at his last miracle that he performed, really was a public miracle in terms of raising Lazarus from the dead. This one was done in private and kept quiet. That one was done publicly and in the open. So radical difference between those two miracles, but nonetheless miracles. And so we get to see Jesus in different roles in that wedding. It's faith. You watch him move in your life. And I read in a book last night, and it was confirmation to what I say all the time, guys. When you completely put your heart in his hands, you can't help but see him move in your life. And he will move in your life. But he wants your heart. It's all about the heart. It's not about, theological knowledge. The fatal 18 inches. You can have all the knowledge you want about God here, but if it's not here, it's fatal. Meaning that you don't have that relationship. You have knowledge, but knowledge doesn't do you any good if it's not here. If you don't have the love that comes with it. So, I love you guys. I know he loves you like crazy. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever Dad wants to talk about. I'm going to post my soap on John 2. But I love you guys. He loves you. You guys have a blessed day.